These are the three main approaches to racial discrimination for black people in America. Hey, what's up, everybody? I want you to know I am starting on my YouTube channel. This is the first show of many that we are going to be doing. And today, I want to talk about something that I'm very passionate about. That is Black history. I'm going to tell you, I was a history teacher for many years. And while I am a full-time pastor right now, this platform is D Speaks. Not Pastor D Speaks, not Reverend Daniel Manuel. D Speaks. Because we're going to cover a wide range of subject matter, and we're going to really just cover the gamut of all the various things that I want to speak about. That's why it's D Speaks. And so look, today I want to talk about what I think are the three critical voices for the response to racial discrimination and racism in America. Three guys who I believe laid out the three perspectives in terms of how black people should respond to a system of white supremacy and, well, just absolute discrimination and racial bias. And they were contemporaries. And while we hear a lot about Martin Luther King, and I'm not taking nothing away from that, I think you need to understand what these three guys were saying, because a lot of what Martin Luther King was able to do came from the thought process and the development of the thoughts of black people after slavery, especially during the period right after the Reconstruction, beginning of the 19th century. These three individuals are, first of all, Booker T. Washington. Second of all, there is W.E.B. Dubois. And then somebody you may not have heard of, but had a very important impact and really was another prominent voice or contemporary voice between those two. His name is Marcus Garvey. And so let me just talk for a minute about how these three brilliant men exerted so much influence in our modern day thinking. And you know, one of the challenges for black people is that there's this conception that all black people, because we're all black, have the same opinion. And we've always, because of the nature of being racist, been housed together so that one person speaks for the whole race. And that's just not the case. We're just as different, individualized as anybody else. That's why Africa, you know, we think of Africa as just one group of ethnic group or one group of people, but Africa is even more diverse than Europe and more diverse than Asia, and the different cultures and the food and the customs. I mean, you know, and I think that's one of the worst things that they call them tribes. I mean, in Europe it would have just been another ethnic group, and you don't try to mix the Danes with the Germans or with the Belgians, with the French. I mean, these are distinct cultures, and they have their own way of doing things and thinking, and they are given their distinct identity. But Africa is a whole bunch of tribes, and they all just, you know, and I think that's how colonialism really messed Africa up, because you drew boundaries across ethnic and cultural lines, and then you wonder why there's so much division and fighting and they can't seem to get it together. It's because you messed them up. European colonialism messed them up. But whatever the case, I want to talk about these three guys. Number one, Booker T. Washington. Booker T. Washington was a brilliant man. He was an educator. We know about Tuskegee University, one of the great HBCUs. HBCU, thank you, sorry about that. I mean, Tuskegee, wow, this was the founder. And Booker T. Washington, he was an advisor to presidents. I mean, he was probably considered the main spokesman for black people when we were coming out of slavery and trying to find their place in a society where they had been slaves. And his perspective was that we have to have what he called racial uplift. And by that meaning, he felt as if we really need to get black people to a place where they were so marketable, they had such a high level of education. Black people had such economic power, and they would be so useful and needed for American society that the white establishment would say, oh, what? Look what you have to offer. And they would kind of usher us in and allow us to have freedom and have an equal share simply because it was in the best interest, because we had so much to offer and we were such contributing factors in our society. And so his thinking was, if we got good enough, the white establishment would let us in. Number two, W.E.B. Du Bois. His philosophy was different. I'd even go so far as to say that I think his philosophy really became the prevailing philosophy in the sense that it was laid the groundwork for the civil rights movement, and pretty much was the idea that what we need to do is we need to push for racial integration. We need to push for the laws to change, or not just to change, but for the Constitution and for the legal system to somehow or another force the white establishment and to bring an end to this mistreatment by using the law and the legal system, the judicial system, and the belief that, well, the Constitution and really the laws that have been passed, like the 13th Amendment and these other laws, these all gave equal protection under the law. These are the way in which we get the white establishment, and we need to protest. We need to challenge the system. We need to get them to allow us to have freedom, because let's face it, that is what democracy is. That's what the Constitution says. And so he founded the Niagara movement, which later became the NAACP, which is really about trying to gather our resources and to go through the court system and actively recruit whites, especially philanthropists and other white elites, to come along and to understand the necessity. Education gave people really. And so he kind of, clashed with Booker T. Washington, because Booker T. Washington was trying to kind of take the soft approach in the sense that let's don't challenge the law, and let's don't get into trying to get the people in the South to allow us to have voting rights. Booker T. Washington said, well, we'll get to that. Let's don't do anything about that now. Let's prove ourselves. Let's be so good at they'll accept us. But W.E.B. Du Bois will say, no, we need to push the envelope. We need to push our agenda. And so they were really kind of at odds. And then there was a third voice. The third voice was Marcus Garvey. Like I said, these were all contemporaries around the early 19th century. And Marcus Garvey actually came from Jamaica, but he came, and his argument, which if you really listen carefully to a lot of the black Muslims, you know, he really preached black nationalism. As a matter of fact, he was really against integration. He thought the worst idea at all is for black people to become assimilated into white society and there could be this partnership. No, he believed there should be a focus on investing in our own institutions. We should educate our own children. And we should create our own, I guess you could say, country within the country, our own black country. I mean, even to the point where he even thought that we should maybe go back to Africa, maybe set up the nation of Liberia as a place where we can go and we can be free. And he also really promoted that Africa as a continent needed to come together and maybe be one country, and we pool our resources and we work for the good of black people. He went to the extreme even of conspiring with the Ku Klux Klan in the sense that he thought that their beliefs that white people should be separate, you know, agreed with his belief that black people should be separate. And just as he thought that white people thought they were better and needed to be pure, he thought black people were better and black people should be pure. And so you had his emphasis was on establishing businesses and being able to get black people to pool their resources and to operate from a position of strength and unity within our community. And so you have these three voices that are really clashing in the sense that W.E.B. Dubois called Marcus Garvey the worst thing that could ever happen for black people because he was not promoting integration and was promoting this idea which he thought was unreasonable, that black people should pull back and just somehow be independent and separate as opposed to integration in terms of being integrated in society and then given the same rights. And the idea of going back to Africa, W.E.B. Dubois thought that was just repulsive because we are Americans and this is where we're from. Marcus Garvey, on the other hand, was saying it's crazy to think that white people are going to ever just somehow or another, see the merits of how wrong they are and just turn around and just give us our rights and give us our just due. And why do we want to do that anyway? And when you hear different ones even today and during the time, maybe people like Malcolm X who said, how ridiculous is it for us to be in a movement like Martin Luther King was saying, where you have nonviolent and you're letting people hit you and strike you and you're sitting there not fighting back. I mean, Malcolm X, it was Marcus Garvey the first to say, what in the world? We're not going to let you hit us. We're going to hit you back. I mean, it's like the Black Panthers who said, look, okay, we're going to get our own guns and we're going to defend ourselves. And so all of these different strands that we see today came from these three different philosophies. I mean, let's face it, Booker T. Washington did a great job in advancing the idea that we need to have educational institutions. Historically black colleges, let's face it, where would we be without them and without the emphasis on developing ourselves and our minds and being proficient so that we don't have to depend on white society or have to go to college that we were denied to go to anyway. And I think one of the things too with Booker T. Washington was he really emphasized entrepreneurship among black people. And then you have W.E.B. Du Bois who is saying, yes, But we are the ones who built this country, built the infrastructure. We are the ones who are due reparations in the sense that why should we, after we are the ones who are responsible for this nation being what it is, now all of a sudden we're just going to give it and leave it and just, go to Africa when all our ancestors have invested? No, we're due right. We are just as much Americans as anybody. This is our country, and so the law, or should we say the Constitution, is supposed to, even though it really at the point it was written, they weren't intending to include black people, but after the Civil War, and after the decision was made that we could be citizens, we're supposed to have the same rights under the Constitution. And so we should push for that and go through legal means and make that happen. And then you get Marcus Garvey standing back saying, why waste our time trying to get, like I said, the white establishment? They don't have any incentive to want to share or to give us what we are due. As far as they're concerned, their racism and their hate is that they used us because we were slaves, and now that we're no longer slaves, they don't have any use for us. And the last thing they're going to do just is on their own conscience or own volition to give over and give us rights. So in closing, I just want to say that all three of them were right. And then all three of them had flaws in their philosophy. Booker T. Washington was absolutely right. I mean, we need to better ourselves. That racial uplift, stop making excuses for ourselves. Not blaming ourselves. I mean, this is the card that we were dealt. Let's make the most of it. Let's play our hand fully. And let's do what we can to be able to become marketable and to become contributing members of society. Let's make ourselves better. Let's don't sit around and complain and feel sorry for ourselves. Let's get to work. I think he's very right about that. And then W.E.B. Dubois, you cannot deny that if it hadn't been for the Niagara movement, NAACP pushing Brown versus Board of Education, I mean, Thurgood Marshall arguing in the Supreme Court. I mean, the civil rights movement started with Dr. Martin Luther King, A.L. Randolph. I mean, you talk about the Civil Rights Act of 1964. I mean, the Voting Rights Act. I mean, this is all great progress. The black people together with other people and putting together integration. Right. Let us, this separate but equal stuff, that ain't working. And so he was right. And he contributed greatly. But then also we cannot deny that Marcus Garvey was so right about many of the things that he said about the need for us to spend money in our own community and promote our own institutions. I mean, we need to educate ourselves. I mean, come on, a lot of this history and a lot of what we're taught about ourselves. I mean, say it loud, I'm black and I'm proud. I mean, this all came out of Marcus Garvey promoting the value, the significance. We are from a very proud, brilliant people. I would argue that it's out of Africa, which was the basis of Western civilization. And it's good for us to feel good about ourselves. Black isn't a bad thing. Being black is a beautiful thing. And I think that his contribution in terms of getting us to realize how we need to pool our resources and work together for ourselves and not sit around and hope that somehow or another we can get some kind of scrap or little piece of something. No. Make ourselves strong, fortify ourselves. And so there's similarities in all three, and yet there are three different strands. But I believe to understand what we do now, we have to draw from all three philosophies. Booker T. Washington, up from slavery, and W.E.B. Dubois, the Niagara movement, and then Marcus Garvey, amen, Black nationalism. All three are the voice of God's people and the response to racial discrimination in America. Well, I think that's enough for now. We'll be back with D Speaks. Yeah, D Speaks. The next time I'll be coming for you, I want to talk about the election of 1877. I think it's real prevalent right now, because when Senator Ted Cruz brought that up right before that riot, I thought to myself, of all the events to bring up, I said, I gotta talk about that. See you later. D Speaks. We're out.